You don't move.
It's like the test screen. Hey!
Welcome back, gang.
Welcome.
Hello.
Yeah, it's good to see you all.
This is we're listen, guys. Look, we're back. We're back with Don, Pope, Katie, and Jed. This is the fourth time we've done this. We're still in the same positions we were the week before and the week before that. And guys, I'm seeing things. What are you seeing?
What are you seeing?
What's happening?
Listen,
because you said you didn't get my Snapchat, so don't be bringing it up on here.
Have you ever heard of like the Prisoner's Cinema? Have you ever heard of that? The Prisoner's Cinema?
No, what's that?
Derived from South African jails, where just to like stimulate themselves in like long sentences in jail and confined. They would put their thumbs on their eyes and push it in until they hallucinated, until they could see, and it would be the Prisoner's Cinema. It was a way of entertaining themselves through hallucinations. Gotta say, I've done it for the last 90 minutes.
So we're all going to do it live, right?
So what? Because you put pressure on your eyes, it makes you hallucinate.
It's called the Prisoner's Cinema. It was rife in a turn of the century South African jails. Nelson Mandela may have done it. He was in there for a long time. All I'm saying is it's great for stuff. Let's get
the Ouija board out and ask him.
Chris, is it for people who can't afford LSD?
Exactly that.
Yeah. Well, apparently Oliver Sacks, when he did testing into migraines, because sometimes when just before a migraine starts, you have what they call an aura, where you see these sort of geometric patterning like come before your eyes. And I suffer from migraines. I used to get this, and apparently it's something to do with your it's the neuro processes of your brain being reflected outwards, like the signals are getting impaired in your brain, so it actually projects it onto the exterior world. So when you see them geometric patterning, it's that your brain's like circuitry. I'm explaining it like a fucking idiot.
I think this one is where you actually push your eyes so it misshapes them, so that you know you can't.
I think I'll probably just stick with Netflix. I'm just.
It was before. It's like you must sit there and go, nothing's on.
Nothing's on.
I'm cancelling this.
When do you turn off? Like you take your thumb off, or do you leave it there? Just so I know for later.
I think you have to just leave them on there with sufficient pressure for at least an hour. I'm not condoning anyone do this, by the way. If you're watching this and you're self-isolated and you want to have entertainment, please don't put your thumbs on your eyes and push firmly for 90 minutes.
Because isn't it in the there's a few movies about highwaymen where that was how they killed people.
With sufficient pressure, that will continue. Your thumbs will continue into the cranium. But just before that, you get a couple of movies streamed.
Spot.
I feel like it's
sorry guys, I believe myself.
No one's watching now because everyone's got their thumbs over there. Okay.
Right, Jed, go on, Jed.
I'm just so confused by this.
Okay, let's mix it up. Let's do our first topic. Are ghosts real? Throwing it out there.
Yes.
Well, okay, I'll tell you something about ghosts quickly. So I when I was young, I used to be a compulsive liar just for like attention, because I kind of felt out of step with the world, and I always felt like I needed to have a story to gain access to a conversation. And I remember I told my nanny Vera that I saw her dead dog Jasper as a ghost, just so that I had something to talk to my nan about. But then it became it got absorbed into our like kind of family folkloric tradition, and I never dispelled it and admitted that it was a lie. So even now, every now and again, like my mum will come up and go, "Oh yeah, remember when you saw Jasper as a ghost when you were young?" And I'll be like, Yeah, that was weird.
I do have one, and I think they might be real. Right?
Really?
Yeah. Are you ready? It's a spooky story up front.
Okay.
But I used to work in the early learning centre, and I would the weekend manager. So I'd go in early to cash up the tills and everything. And this one morning I was doing my cashing out, and this remote control car just drove across the doorway to the office.
Oh, mate.
And it made just like drove in a straight line directly across the door. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, there's no one else here. So I went out to have a look. And as I got out the door, all of these mobile phones got set off. Now, they all have battery tab things that you have to pull the batteries tabs out for them to work. So there's no way but they all went off. Just one type of toy, just all went off for about 10 seconds. It was mental. And then I went back in the office and just went, hello, and put the radio on. I was like, I don't know what, just me here alone for an hour.
I think I would just rage quit my job at that bit. I'd just be like, I'm out. I'm done.
I used to live in a haunted house as a young kid. And
wait,
my dad
a haunted house like in a fairground or a house that is haunted?
Well, I was probably about 5 or 6, and we moved into this house, and it was quintessentially haunted. You know, it was called the old coach house. It was a stable with an old Victorian vet, and before that, it was like a place for horses and stuff. So I used to tell the vicar and people who used to come around to investigate our house that I could hear noises, and they were the noises of horses' hooves. People thought I was mental, right? But the voice of an animal should still be validated in the afterlife, right? So anyway, I heard these hooves, and people just thought I was crazy. But the ancient voices of Victorian pets is what I was hearing. But generally, there was like hoofs. We could hear hoofs coming down the hallway. There would be the odd sound of a horse. It was being haunted by cattle.
like the idea of a horse. Sorry, the idea of a horse is like the idea of a ghost is unfinished business. Like, what's this horse's unfinished business? Has he got some hay that he needs to graze? Did he want in the national? What's going on?
We moved house, and we had everyone's got a friend of a friend that does like clairvoyant or reads cards or whatever. So she came around, she went, "Oh no," a ghost has followed you into your new house. I was so angry because I thought the bastard probably watched me pack. Do you know what I mean? That's what I was so angry about, is that. Also, we moved into a posh council house that was brand new. Mom goes to me, "Don't worry, ghosts don't like new builds." and I was cured. I
like the idea of this horse that followed you all the way to this house. So it was a new build and ended up. He was like, "Oh, I can't live with him now."
Harry, something. Oh.
Hi, Charlotte.
Now, ghost, live in a new build and you're fine. That's the answer.
How long does a house take to become haunted, though? Like,
it's got to be 100 years. I think it has to be by law.
Right.
By law. I was there, law.
Ghost law.
Yeah, that's my ghost story. But yeah, there was some noises, and I think I'm hearing them now. It's the point I was making. I'm in an old Victorian house with like wooden saplings that's freezing.
Do you think maybe the horse just like hid in a suitcase waiting for you to go to another Victorian?
I reckon it was behind the removal van galloping. We left it at home. This is like, "No, I will haunt you in your new house." But we didn't.
Was that actual horse, or was that a pantomime horse? Like 2 people just dressed as one horse, 2 ghosts.
Those Mary Poppins horses.
Are you sure you just want your parents outside your house with some coconuts? Just like, this will get him.
I think the horse is back. Is what I'm saying.
Do you think if you put your thumbs on your eyes for too long, you start hearing horses? Maybe it's an audio-visual thing. The prisoners.
I remember when I took ketamine, I had an oral hallucination that sounded like my friend Tom Jenkins, a choir made up of Tom Jenkins. And my friend Tom Jenkins had this really like nasal way of speaking, and yeah, I just had an oral hallucination that sounded like a choir of Tom Jenkins's.
We could have used that ketamine for that horse. He wouldn't have followed me.
I know, yeah.
It has to be ghost ketamine.
Yeah,
Ghost ketamine.
I don't think I believe in ghosts. Like there's some spooky stuff that happened, but my first logical thought isn't like that's a ghost. Like I don't know.
It's like it seems like it's like the detritus of your brain just reflecting outwards, like what we were saying about seeing the aura of a migraine, which is like the cytoarchitecture of your of being processed through your visual cortex rather than through other parts of your brain. I think ghosts is like that. It's where your brain part of your brain has just been rerouted through the visual cortex rather than through somewhere else. But I don't know. But then I'm a mystic as well. Like I'm an etherealist rather than a materialist. Like I believe in metaphysical.
What's that word again?
Etherealist rather than a materialist. So I believe in sort of a metaphysical conception of God and that kind of shit. So I believe in mystic practices and that. So yeah, mate, I'm all for ghosts. I'm gonna go with that.
I'm to the point of someone went, "Oh, this is a ghost," and I saw a real ghost. I'd be like, "Ghosts are real." Like I'm not like a skeptic. I'm not like this is just all bollocks, guys. You see?
So I got another spooky one.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to hear another spooky one? I'm gutted that I don't have the photographic evidence of this, but my friends were all on a hen do, and they'd gone camping by Loch Ness. And they were all on this hen do camping, and they decided to get a big group photo. And they took this photo, and then when they looked at the screen, they'd seen that there was a little boy in the photo, but they were the only people on this campsite. And obviously, when they were taking the photo, that he wasn't. There was no one else there.
There was no little boy, and there was
no little boy, and it was in the photo.
Do you think like ghosts love photo bombing? Is that it? Is that the same in nightclub photos? So when I die, is that what I'm just going to be doing? You'll see me in the back of photos like...
But I always think like this, whenever like a ghost reveals itself, it reveals itself as like a full ghost. But even if I just saw like the tip of a knob, like just flash into thin air, and then just like if I just saw a little ghost tip of a knob, it would still like it would make me reevaluate my entire life. Like the moment I just saw like that little.
I think a ghost of Pope would spend eternity with his penis in the mouths of ghost hunters.
I would.
This is something that most Asian comics have said, like in Man Yusuf, which is why are all ghosts white?
I know, mate.
Yeah.
I know.
It's not me. All comics have said this. Maybe there's racism in the afterlife. So
I think there is, mate. I think that's it. We'll be fine, most of us here.
I'm fucked again.
You're going to be chucked to the other side, mate.
First time I heard about ghosts, I used to watch a program as a kid called Strange But True with Michael Aspel.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, it was brilliant, but it was debunked in newspapers. So
yeah. Wasn't there? What was that hoax ghost show where like didn't a guy like shit himself to death watching it?
Was that most haunted?
No, I mean that is one, but no, this was like in the 80s. I mean before my time, but it was like they set it up as if it was like a proper. Yeah, as if it was like a proper sort of
there's loads of those. Yeah, there's
like magazine show. Yeah.
I
can't remember what it's called. Mr. Pipes, like Mr. Pipes. The ghost was called Mr. Pipes. I remember that much. So if anyone knows,
spooky name called Mr. Pipes.
That was the name they gave him. I'm sure of it. Hello, I'm Mr. Pipes. I'd knock him out, mate.
I'm just shaky and rattly.
Who's that coming out of your cupboard? It's Mr. Pipesy. It's Mr. Pipesy.
And he's called Mr. Pipes because he keeps flashing his bell end, and that's when I saw it. That's when I reevaluated my life, mate.
But you saw this was a paedophile, not a ghost.
Yeah, he felt very real.
I guess this moves us on nicely to what Don wanted to bring to the evening.
Sorry to interrupt. First of all, I was going to do unexplained conspiracies. Is why I haven't progressed on the comedy circuit, but I think that'd be too much of a joke. This is everyone on Facebook is doing a picture of when they were 20. Something to do with 2020. I want to show you a picture of me when I was 20. Here it is. Can anyone see it?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I should explain this.
The dog.
Yeah, I'm a Hindu. This was a picture of me when I was 20 in a past lifetime.
Right.
I was reincarnated as a dog. So
you're a very handsome dog.
That would explain you dragging your ass across the carpet. That explains that.
Exactly, and shitting myself. So, hashtag reincarnation. I haven't got any pictures in this lifetime, but I reckon reincarnation exists, and I'll leave with this. It's because India is one of the most populated countries in the world, and it's mainly Hindus, 80%. So people are not dying; they're just getting reincarnated, and it's just getting busier and busier. So
what is? Reincarnation. Like I said, I'm a Quaker, but there is some overlap with like Eastern practices and stuff like that. And I really loved the third series of Twin Peaks, the David Lynch Twin Peaks: The Return, and there's a trope within David Lynch films where they call it the eternal return or the ever returning father, and I think it pertains to like resurrection and stuff like that. But is there like a hard and fast rule within like Hindu practice when you're supposed to come back? Like how long are you dead for before you pop back into the world?
All I know is that you come back straight away and you get reincarnated 4 or 5 times. I might be talking rubbish here. And after that, you go to heaven and hell. So you get reincarnated straight away, to my knowledge. Several times, and then you go to heaven or hell. So
you get to choose. Or is it just like literally as random as life itself? Like you're a mosquito and you've got 24 hours to live the high life. Or can you choose an elephant 5 times?
It's like a resurrection slot machine. You have to pull the lever. I'm a peanut. I'm a fucking peanut, mate.
In my past life, I actually was an Indian elephant, small ears. So, saying that, Chris, I don't think you get to choose. I just think it's very random.
If you do good things, you get reincarnated as something better, and you have to leave. But if you have a shitty life and then you get reincarnated as something like a worm. How do you have a good life as a worm to be like, all right, you can move back up the ranks?
I love worms, right? I said in an interview before, if I had to be anything, because with Quakers, they want all life to be reduced down to its bare essentials. They want everything streamlined to utter simplicity. And with worms, they don't have a brain. They just have what's called a ganglion, which is like a bundle of nerves. And so everything... Life is so binary and simple, and that's why I would love to be a worm. I would absolutely love it.
Can we?
Can I just say, maybe Quakers do control the world because there's a lot of Trump supporters, and you can't get anyone more simple than a Trump supporter. But
exactly. So
sorry, go on.
I'd love to be a worm. Like I say, like if I because I love animals, I believe all living things are like sacrosanct and that all life is worth preserving. So if I walk along and I see a worm, I'll like pop it into a safe space to make sure it's safe and that no one's treading on it. But sometimes when you walk along to find a safe space, there isn't one for fucking ages. So at that point, you're just walking along, holding a worm. Yeah,
we've got a bit of a clip to show. I think there was a clip there. We're going to play that.
Oh yeah, go on. Is it worm based?
Now.
They're probably like, what?
No, it's not.
So, when we were in high school, one of our teachers actually passed out a flyer, and it had like the whole entire like theory, like the whole entire conspiracy. So I remember her coming out of her class because she had this class before me, and she was like, "Guess what? Like, let me blow your mind and tell you what." And she told me, and we were little, so I was like, "What?" I was like, "Are you for real? Like, I can't."
And especially like me telling her that our teacher told me. So it's like, this is factual. Like, oh my god. But yeah, we're just gonna go through the like coincidences. Basically it's just like their lives were extremely similar that it's like kind of scary. So we're just gonna go through all the coincidences and then we will let you guys know what we think at the end. So Abraham Lincoln was elected into Congress in 1846 and John F. Kennedy was elected into Congress 100 years later in 1946.
So the next thing would be that Lincoln was elected president in 1860 and Kennedy was elected president in 1960.
So again, 100 years.
It goes on a bit.
So another one.
Are they talking about just their process of coming back within the reincarnation? Is that the understanding?
Yeah, basically, I missed a bit out where they say that Kennedy was Abraham Lincoln in a past life. So that's the example of reincarnation. Apparently.
Yeah, I guess I've always been intrigued by the kind of the discussion around how each afterlife is perceived around different parts of the world. So like obviously the reincarnation of kind of Hinduism and the afterlife of kind of Christianity. It's kind of like it's like we need that comfort, I guess, of that continuing involvement, in eternity. Otherwise yeah. Panic comes from uncertainty about where we're going to go.
The biggest fear is death. Well, second biggest fear after public speaking. So people want to naturalize it. So. And also with that one, with Kennedy and Abraham Lincoln, they had a lot of similar things. Apparently, they both got assassinated because they wanted to create their own currency, interest-free. So stuff like that. So there are a lot of similarities between their lives. But
well, I mean, sorry, Katie, go on. Sorry, I jumped in there.
I was just going to chime in with, you think he'd learn from the first time to not then do it again and do the same end? Do you know what I mean?
Well, isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results?
Yeah. Or at least he could block the bullet that time, like just block it.
Yeah. I've been here before.
Well, there's lots of similarities between their deaths, isn't there? I don't know if you've like seen that, but like they were both assassinated, and then like one of the assassins went from like a book warehouse to a theater, where one went through a theater to a book warehouse, and lots of similar stuff like that.
Oh, there's similarities. There's pages of them, isn't there? Absolutely, pages of them.
So
yeah, that's really.
Was it? So it was a bit. So it was. Is that Link? It was Lincoln and JFK, wasn't it? Was it Lincoln and JFK? Yeah. All right, but I remember one of the most haunting. It's always like the minor details within these big historical, world historic events. I remember one of the details that was awful about that when he got shot and his brain and skull splat against the car. Jackie Kennedy. Climbed onto the bonnet because she was just in shock and panic, climbed onto the bonnet and collected up pieces of his skull to try and piece back onto his head. I remember that just like that really sort of drove it home to me, because that's the kind of mental systematic thing you do, thinking, just anything I can do to make sure he survives. And I remember that being really haunting when I heard that.
Just to say, do you know who was at that time in the exact same place? It was George Bush Sr. Apparently he was, when they asked him about the assassination, years later, he had a little smirk. So,
but there's the idea of the free tramps as well. They were like free guys who were like that. They look like degenerates and sort of down and outs. And people have always said that they've got something to do with it. And Woody Harrelson's dad, who was actually a hitman, he was a contract killer. He was a hired killer. He admitted to being one of those tramps and to killing JFK.
Wow.
So there's always been a conspiracy about like whether he was actually connected, but apparently he was a massive coke fiend as well. And, I remember when I was a coke fiend, I lied to someone and said I worked for the Guardian. So
there's also the Umbrella Man.
What's that?
Umbrella Man.
The Umbrella Man conspiracy about JFK. If you look at the footage, there's a guy with an umbrella, which is a weird thing to have because like it wasn't due to rain or anything like that. So they believe that he put the umbrella up for the timings for the snipers.
Wow. Or the
the Bushka lady. Yeah, the Bushka lady.
They didn't find her tapes, did they?
Yeah, they never recovered any of her footage.
I went to where Abraham Lincoln was shot in the Ford's Theatre, and I went over the road to the house that he was in, and it was quite a sobering experience to kind of be in the booth that he was shot at, and it was like his flimsy door that's in the museum there. There's a blood-stained pillow and stuff, and like I kind of looked over and thought I could probably jump that, but I ended up breaking my ankle like John Wilkes Booth did. But you could jump it, and when I was in the booth, I kind of looked down and thought, if you shot someone, you definitely jump that. But it looks lower than it actually is because you've got the stage that's kind of, it's like the way the theatre is a really old theatre, and his booth was the one right next to the stage. So you could technically jump from that and down onto the stage, but it's still about 16 feet, but it doesn't look that when you're up there. You just shot someone in the head. And I thought, can I do it? Can I just do that?
I always think that there is a thing whenever I go to these sites, again, that have a real world historical significance. And my first thought is I could smash the shit out of that. Like every time I see a site, like if it's like a grave of like an important figure who's died, I think I could just boot that in, mate. I could do anything with that. I could piss on that. Why do I want to destroy everything?
Well, that is the whole thing about the point about entropy, and that everything goes down to the dust, and that I think they say you die 3 times actually, where like that you die physically first, and then the next time you die is when the last person says your name ever, and then the second one is when your name gets rubbed off the gravestone. I guess that was more kind of previous times, because now you've got videos of me doing star jumps since 2000. When I die and future generations and kids and grandkids or whatever look back and they'll go, great grandfather did this podcast in 2020. Because everything's there for them now. Everything is there for everyone to see, going back hundreds of years now in the future. It's going to be odd.
Well, I believe like when your somatic self is erased by flames when you die, and your bodily self is recommitted back to the earth, etc. I do believe in an essential self that exists beyond the body. I really do. I really, truly believe that. So whether that takes its form as a ghost or as a peanut or as a little floating knob that we talked about earlier, whatever it is, I believe that there is a self that exists beyond the body.
Well, when I die, I'm going to go back in time and prank Katie when she's at work. That's what I'm going to do.
I'm going to drive a jaggedy car.
Yeah. Now I've got it. Don, admit it, you have been haunting me as that horse for fucking years. It was you.
It was me all along, yeah.
No. Pope, what was your work way round, and we go down to what was your bringeth to the table of ghosts and unexplainable?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, mine. I think I'll do the second one. So the first one I did was like a true. It was more a true crime story rather than something that had any kind of supernatural component. So I'll talk about human spontaneous combustion. I don't really know much about it, and I know that there's probably an empirical sort of scientific explanation to it. But I always, when I had these big books that I got from my nan when I was really young, and I would always read about like different dimensions, and that always really captured my imagination. This idea of human spontaneous combustion would be one of the things that really caught me. And there has been recorded cases of it, and no one's been able to verify exactly why it has occurred. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it caught them, didn't it? So, yeah. I mean, I think with that one, that's it's a bit like, did the body just consume its own fat, heat up, and combust, or was there an outside source?
Yeah, that's what they said. They said they might have omitted potential sources of ignition to like maintain the mystery behind these spates of human spontaneous combustion. But then, like you said as well, people said there's ways that the fat in the body could have been ignited, even if there wasn't necessarily an outside source. It could have been something to do with like inflammation in the body. Or, I don't know. I'm not.
So people just. How often does this happen? Is it?
It's quite. It's been enough for it. It's been enough times, enough cases of people to go, because none of the room around it is burnt. This person's burnt to a crisp. The bed is charred and the metal is bent, but the room is still intact. Like, so whatever's happened, it's confined it to this bubble, which is actually inexplainable, because the way that heat transfers, a house fire, a room fire of that temperature should burn the entire room down. But like pictures and glass is still intact, and there's clothes that haven't been burnt. It's like just this little area.
There's like legitimate scientists who spent years doing conducting research into this and stuff like that. So it is like an area, a very niche area, but it is an area of scientific inquiry.
That's a sad day at work.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might like bubbling fat. You might like people on fire. I don't know. I mean, I once set fire to a guy as a joke. It was two guys. He stabbed me with a fork, and the fork actually went deep into the skin. And there's another guy I stabbed with a fork, and then the first guy who stabbed me with a fork, he had big hair, like crispy hay, and I set fire to a bit of his hair, thinking that it wouldn't go up too much, but then it went up a lot, and then we had to put his fiery head out.
And this was in prison? Oh.
No, this was just in Romford. It was
spontaneous combustion.
This was just a night out. I set fire to a guy's hair, but he hurt me first. So if you want to get me on that, police, you won't, because he started it.
There's a club in London. It's on like 5 levels. I think it might be in New Cross. It's in like 5 levels. And I went there many years ago for a Halloween party, and some guy turned up as the mummy dressed up in toilet roll, and he went into the smoking area, and everyone had their lighters out. And this guy was getting chased around the smoking area.
I would have loved to see that in the Brendan Fraser film.
Yeah. So with regards to spontaneous combustion, I think it's probably been disproven. I think it's probably I didn't have a clip. I had that because what I was originally going to talk about was DB Cooper. There we go. We've got a visual reference there. Hello, there's
Hello,
mate. I would love to have a go at your name, mate, but that is way beyond my linguistic abilities, unfortunately. But hello, Scalo. I'm sorry, mate. If you can correct us on how to pronounce it, I'd love to be able to pronounce it properly. So let us know how to
call
do
him
it.
Dave.
Yeah, cheers, Dave. I hate when people anglicize people's names. They used to do it in my work. So I used to work in a very multicultural workforce, and I really loved it. And people would say their actual names, and people would be like, "Oh, we'll just call you John. We'll just call you Dave." And I was like, "Their name is just Ionut. Like, it's not that hard to pronounce. Ionut. It's a Romanian name. I will just call him John, mate." And I'd be like, "It's Ionut. Just Ionut. Just a couple of practices. Ionut. You'll get it."
Don isn't even my real name. They just gave it to me, but named after Wimbledon. So my actual name is Anupol Biswas, but people can't pronounce it.
Anupol.
Yeah,
that's easy. Anupol.
I just call myself Don now for the benefits. So
Anytime you want to take that back, Don, I'm with you. Anytime you want to start that again.
Yeah, and your power. I like it, mate. It's a lovely name.
Powerful. Woo. I just get this.
has everyone
DB Cooper, wasn't we? Was a little light bit about DB Cooper?
Wait, what? Say that again. So I didn't hear that.
Has Katie been combusted?
Yeah. Katie spontaneously combusted.
No, we were discussing. I was doing a bit of research on DB Cooper. Actually, you was discussing.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and I found that story quite intriguing, but I also quite like the guy.
Yeah, I know as well.
It was ballsy, wasn't he?
Yeah, very ballsy, and I like the fact that he ordered a what's the drink he ordered before he ordered like something that in a kind of ball glass, like them type of drinks. I don't know, whiskey and rye or something. But yeah, he ordered that, and then he passed a note to the flight attendant saying like, "Chill out, but I've got a bomb," basically. And I think it's the only hijacking of a commercial flight that is unsolved. It is the only, or I think it's actually the only hijacking of a plane that's been unsolved.
He jumps out of the parachute, right?
Yeah. So he got, to break it down, he got on a commercial flight and was like, "Guys, I've got a bomb." So they landed, got loads of money. They went. Did he let some of the hostages off? And then
I think he did. Yeah, I think they so the flight was grounded. He let a few of them off, but kept the pilots on, I think, and then went back up again. And with money, I think they gave him the money at this point.
And he jumped out the plane.
Yeah, he jumped out of the plane, but then they said he probably did die on impact, but then they found like bits of money here and there over the years and bits of clothing like way away from the point where he would have hit the ground, and but they've never found out exactly who it is. But I think there's about 3 contenders of people, and one guy who died like last year, the year before, who there's a lot of evidence to support the fact that they might have been DB Cooper.
I was the Alcatraz escapees, the brothers and the friends that escaped Alcatraz jail.
Yeah.
I think this could be a past conspiracy that has probably been more towards the fact now, because there was a letter in 2018 that allegedly, what was the guy's name? John Anglin.
The Anglin brothers, yeah.
Yeah, so one of them wrote a letter in which you can Google the Anglin letter, and it just says that he said that he had cancer and that he had 1 year to live, and that he had cancer, and that he will come back to jail and do 1 year if they'll give him cancer treatment. And they had it for 5 years before they even let the family know they had this. Say 5 years. So they had it in 2013, and in 2018 it came out to us. So and then the family were upset because they did it. The fault is didn't let the family know that there was dad that was potentially dying. But also, like, it got sent off to the crime lab for the handwriting because they had the handwriting. It came back as inconclusive, which basically means this is probably going to be real, but we can't really say it's real. Although family members have seen it and said that is his handwriting. That is no doubt his handwriting. But because it's like written by an 80-year-old man and not a 25-year-old guy when he went into jail, they can't really compare the handwriting like that. But one of the grandmas said that she still got flowers on her birthday for a considerable time, and it stopped about in like 1985 that she was getting flowers regularly. And I kind of thought, well, that's got to be proof that they made it, surely, if there's like all of this circumstantial evidence.
Well, their childhood friend met him in Brazil, I believe, and got a photo with them, and then they did tests. The FBI did tests on them, and they were like, "Yeah, that's probably them."
Yeah, I think it's with. I mean, obviously, until they can actually have a watertight case, it's all kind of circumstantial evidence and stuff like that. But like with Robert Rax, so that's the guy, Robert Rackstraw, who was the prime suspect for being DB Cooper, one of them. He died last year, but when and he was a paratrooper, so he had the expertise to be able to jump from a plane of this height and survive it. And when a journalist said to him, like for years, they'd obviously been speaking to him about being DB Cooper. When a journalist first approached him, he went, "I wouldn't discount myself." He went, if it was me, I wouldn't discount myself. And he years later said he was saying it's kind of wind up the journalist. But there's so much when you look into Robert Rackstraw. I haven't got the Rackstraw. I haven't got all the information that supports the fact he was DB Cooper. But when I read it, I was very convinced that this was the man, which is incredible. And the thing I love, the reason I got interested in DB Cooper is when, I won't tell you how Mad Men ends for those of you who might have not seen it yet, but when it was winding up the series, one of the theories, because it's sort of around about the same time that the DB Cooper thing happened, one of the theories that was that Don Draper, in the final scenes, you was going to see him walk into the airport where the DB Cooper flight had occurred, and that it was going to hint at the fact that Don Draper went on to be DB Cooper, which I think would have been a really cool ending of Mad Men. But yeah, that's the first time I got interested in DB Cooper. But
I think there was there something where a similar thing had happened, and they thought that it could have been him again. He could have done it again, where there was something that had the signature hallmarks of his criminal behavior, where he asked for the same amount of money, ordered the same drink or something. I think if you do a little bit of digging, there's something where it may have happened again in a different country, and the same.
Wasn't that person like infinitely less experienced? Like he'd got like a practice parachute that wouldn't open.
He had a Quavers bag. They're like, mate, you are very ill equipped to do this.
He had an umbrella and watched Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
I am DB Cooper. DB is Don Biswas. So.
There he is. Yeah, we're here.
Reincarnation. I was him in the past life. So yeah. Mystery solved.
Right, we're mystery solved. I brought something to the table because I'm intrigued to look. I watched Men in Black and I wanted to know what the story was behind it. And I kind of feel like the movie industry bring out movies so that we can't validate our concerns for why there's men walking around and going in places with black suits and kidnapping people. And they go, "Oh, it's just a movie," but I've got a clip, and make of this clip what you will. It's not much research on it. It's basically it's a little kind of circulated around the social a few years ago, and I kind of want to revisit it in case people haven't seen it. And make of it what you will. I can't conclude whether this clip is once it appears is real or not. It's filmed basically like a guy who is quite a tall guy in a black suit. Could be a one of those Men in Blacks that we're describing, and he walks into a law firm and then controls this lady, and then she walks out of the law firm, and then he follows her. And then I did a little bit of researching as to I'll talk you through it.
But I need to document this.
Okay, let's just turn the volume off. There's a guy whispering. There's a guy whispering over it, and what he's basically doing is he's working for this law firm, and he's basically filming quite secretly if he just shows the screen. And his work colleague has been abducted, and he's basically showing us the let's move it along a second if you can. Let's move on to the bit where it's just a tad. There we go. A bit before, a bit before that. There we go. So here she is. Okay, so she's sitting there. This is a real lady working for a real law firm in Alaska. She was reported missing from her law firm, and the colleague that's filming this basically discussed with her when she got back, and she had no memory of this individual coming in. She had no memory of leaving, no memory going home, because she actually went home, had no memory of doing that whatsoever. She's allegedly a professional in a law firm, and she went camping prior to this event for 3 days with her friends. This was the next working day. It's the only information I could find on it. I don't know whether this is real. In a moment, you're going to see. Is it stuck on that? Is it actually playing forward? There's some guy. Someone's going to walk in a second. Let's play it if it's playing, and there should be someone walking. There he is. So this guy is talking to her. Nothing unbeknownst of that. Although it does look by their acting a little bit shifty, but they're from Alaska, so they're American, so they kind of always act like they're in a movie. Takes his jacket. He's like, I'm shutting up shop. Let's speed it up a second, see if we can get him leave. He's putting his jacket on. He fancies her for sure, because no one puts the jacket on that slowly. You live in Alaska. You put your coat on, you leave. He was asking her for a drink then, and another guy beat him to it, as we're going to find out. Okay. Someone's going to walk in the door, and so this is taken from a CCTV in the firm. So I guess maybe it's been tampered with. I don't know. Right, is this guy? Let's see when this guy turns up. I know he comes. Look, he's coming in. Okay, look, he's coming in. She's like getting all freaks. Look, the guy's walked in, quite tall, black suit. She's like, I'm sorry. This guy is like, look, he's 7 foot, 6 foot something, giving him directions. And the report back from this is from the guy asking her, was that she doesn't remember any of this happening. So I don't really. If you can find any information on this, or as a scam or a conspiracy or from a movie or something, then definitely send it in to us, because I'd happily sleep better. But
Chris, we'll have to search in Google to find it.
I think it's Men in Black Alaskan law firm.
Oh, brilliant! Cheers.
I think with the Men in Black conspiracy theory, is it that they're aliens, or that they're like they're secret clandestine government agents that are trying to hide the existence of aliens?
I don't know. It could be a program. The Men in Black could be a program where there's there's loads of pictures and images and videos of like the presidents or presidents before kind of just being with guys that are looking like they are aliens. And there was one famous one about 5 years ago where they had this I think it might have been Obama that was doing a speech, and there was this guy that was standing in front of him just scanning more faces than what was humanly possible to scan. So he was like, they filmed him just scanning so many faces so quickly that it looked robotic. Yeah. And the video's out there of this guy actually doing it. And it kind of thought like, are they, to protect the president, are they kind of going to this kind of elite level secret service?
I think they are. I think they're probably just like advanced operatives. I think they're human beings, but the problem is there's certain things. This is where I can sometimes feel it like they are genuinely like clandestine government forces with regards to like spycraft and things like that. And so like one of like the most monstrous Secret Service intrusions was that for years and years and years until recently, that the MI5 was able to control staff appointments at the BBC. Now that's not a conspiracy. Yeah. That's an actual fact that's been recorded by legitimate journalists and stuff like that. And that to me is more nefarious than a robotic government agent or I don't know what Men in Black is supposed to be. There's certain things like that, and especially with the programs in the 1970s and 1960s where they were drugging the general populace with LSD to see if that they could. We lost him to the light there. We lost him to the light. I met Secret Service when I tried to jump the fence to the White House in 2016. And I was backpacking on the States on my own, and I ended up staying in this hostel, and I was just like showing off as usual. And I went down to where, if you've ever been to Washington DC, where you've been to the White House, it's like the fences, and where it is, it's like it's in the middle of like it's the middle of like a city or a town, but it's not where you think it is. It's like putting it in the middle of a shopping centre. It's tiny as well, isn't it? It's tiny.
It's really small.
It's really small, yeah.
black fences go around it, and people are selling burritos and stuff like that. And I just thought that I came back in the nighttime, and there was no one. There was no one on the lawn, and Obama was in Cuba at the time, so there wasn't a massive presence there. So there was no one on the lawn. You know, when you look at a lawn, you say, there's no one on that lawn, right? Next thing I know, I jump over the fence, get my leg over the black fence. My leg's up, but one leg's down. And this guy just comes out of the ground like it's take me out. Just comes out of the ground.
like a Diglett. The White House is protected by fucking Diglets.
But it's not like he comes out the ground physically. He just appears somewhere that in my head, I'm like, there was no one on the lawn, and there he is, with his hand on his gun. And I'm like, help me down. And he's like, step back from there. And I'm like, I can't, I'm shutting off. And,
that guy on the video, though, he did look like the demon headmaster.
Yeah, I remember that.
I always get the demon headmaster mixed up with the Queen's nose. What was the Queen's nose about?
You rubbed the coin, the Queen's nose.
And what happened? You just saw noses.
Magic.
I said this the other day. I remember when I was in senior school, and we was talking about Bernard's watch, and you remember Bernard's watch, and we've all had the conversation of going, what would we do if we could do it? And I remember I was in senior school, and with like groups of like all like the guys who were like quite hard and the tough guys at school talk about what we'd do if we had Bernard's watch. I said I'd love to like have Bernard's watch so I could stop time and have a really good look at everyone's knobs to see what we're dealing with, like to see if anyone's not, because I wanted to see if anyone had like if they really had an upper hand because their knob was bigger than mine, and I wanted to have a really good inspection of everyone's knobs so that I would know how we was on like the masculine hierarchy. And
wow.
How will every conspiracy
come back to
I remember the idea of naked attraction before it even started.
It's like I'm reading a book about Fred West and Rose West, which is awful and really, really brutal. But Fred West had like a real big hang up with the size of everyone's knobs, and he'd always he'd get Rose to have an affair with men, and like to put a ruler against their knob, and he'd have like this little notepad with all the sizes of the men's penises. It's very weird.
It never goes to girth, it's always length. No one's going around anymore. No one's going around.
Speaking of that, my mate, when I spoke about that Tom Jenkins earlier on, so Tom Jenkins always used to watch. Tom Jenkins was a little bit, he looked like he had just come out of clay, like he was like the earliest man who had just come out of clay and was like half clay, half man. And he used to pop his knob out at parties, and it was so thick, but lengthwise was so small that it looked like a discus. It looked like it looked like a tiny a plate. It's such a weird knob.
My conspiracy unexplained.
Go on, Katie.
I feel like my unexplained can't possibly come back to knobs.
Is it going to?
Oh no, Jed's gone. Too many knobs.
Too many knobs.
Too many
knobs spoiled the broth.
He didn't like that last knob.
God.
Hey, Jed.
How long is it, Jed?
Measure it.
He's measuring it, yeah.
That came in my room.
Katie, you brought something to the what was it?
Yeah. The Towers hum. I'm not very good at pronunciations. The Tau hum. Yeah.
Oh.
So this is it. You might need to listen to this one. I mean.
that's her way of telling me to shut the fuck up about knobs.
One man, one chance. Tails hum. You got to turn it up a little bit. Have a little noisy.
Yeah, see if you can hear the hum. Oh, there you go. So basically, in some people will come on in a second, and I'd recommend staying for them. But it's this Towers hum. Apparently, only 2% of the population can actually hear this low-level hum that happens in the city.
Shortly after we moved here, within the first few months, I just woke up in the middle of the night and heard this strong humming sound, kind of like a
Wife's vibrator.
Just a steady hum. I'm not sure of the exact pitch. It's kind of low. Not unlike a refrigerator sounds.
But definitely not.
The only possibility that I can think of for the Taos hum would be that the Earth's crust here is very thin.
Thin crust.
It's one of the thinnest places on Earth. So it's quite possible with the crust being that thin, and you can. It's attested to by all the volcanoes that are around here.
We could probably stop it.
This
guy goes on about a crust for ages.
So many wives are throwing their dildos out the window here because what's this? I'm like,
what's this happening? But no one can musically describe it, right? So the descriptions are all completely different. So no one can be sure that they're actually hearing the exact same thing. Just like 2% of people.
That's interesting. Though. No, I've not heard that one before.
I wondered if it was. It could be, I thought it was like, in McDonald's where they play that high pitched sound so that youths don't gather outside. Maybe it's like the opposite, like it's a low pitched sound for their teams. They just stay indoors or don't sleep.
I thought you meant the beeping when the chips are ready.
Yeah.
But Tesla said that frequency is the life is frequency and resonance. So maybe it's a resonance that only they can hear in that area because of the thin crust being rung like a bell.
Thin crust. Oh, there's another thing that they're saying that the US military are doing tests underground, and that's the hum that you can hear.
Yeah.
That could be it.
But yeah, I just love the first guy. Really, not too dissimilar to a refrigerator.
Yeah, but definitely not. You sure it's not your refrigerator, mate? No, it's the crust. It's secret experiments underground.
I think I know what it is. I figured it out. I think someone next door, in every case, is playing that song by the Crash Test Dummies.
Katie, when you go clubbing or discoteching, and
I think you're talking to the wrong person.
Katie,
I'll pretend.
When you do a discotheque,
yeah.
When you come back from a night out and your ears are ringing, apparently that's your frequency swan song, and that your ears will never hear that frequency again, and you should enjoy it. So
I always wear earplugs when I go out.
Boring.
Do you know what the Towers hum does remind me of? A trick we used to do at school, really naughty. But if we had cover teachers in, one of my pals in my class would start a very low hum. And we'd gradually spread it around the room, and everyone would join in one by one until the teacher was like, "I'm going mad! What's this sound?" It would just be us all singing.
You used to do that with gas for the Bunsen burners. We sit there and go.
I once put an ice white in my eye. Do you remember the ice whites that were like little postage stamps, but they dissolve on your tongue? Yeah. I once popped one of them on my eyeball and had a panic attack. And a teacher called Jesus Jones had to cradle me in his arms and take me to sick bay.
Mate, they were so strong. They were so strong as well.
Yeah, I popped one in my eye.
Wow.
I used to do shit like that outside. A pathological need to amuse, and I used to do shit like that all the time to myself.
I feel like it's the same hum. I used to play a lot like Pokemon on the Game Boy Color when I was a kid, but when I turned it off on a night to go to bed, I'd still hear the tune.
Yeah.
So I reckon they've just been playing with the vibrators too much. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah. Definitely. Like just a town full of really horny women. But also it was quite a religious town, I take it. I heard it seemed quite religious. And that's, like onanism and masturbation and that is quite kind of banned in places like that. So it might just be horny wives who are ashamed of it, have to pop the dildo out the window when the husbands come in. And now everyone thinks it's like a demon in the crust or something.
There's been a sharp increase in the sales of sex toys across the UK. I think it's gone up by about like 170%.
Yeah.
Of people going like, let's just go get a 40-inch wooden leg.
It's great. Yeah, like there was I absolutely support like Amazon workers striking because of the awful conditions that they're put in. But one of these Amazon workers was striking and talking about how they're being forced to kind of ship out non-essential items and it's ridiculous. And he was listing off the non-essential items and he said, like, dildos, how is that an essential item? And every woman I saw on Twitter was like, yeah, actually, I think I beg to differ. I do beg to differ because I feel like, everyone needs to be sexually satisfied in this current moment. And men can just squeeze it out like toothpaste in the sink. It's so much easier. But for women, it's they need it's a bit more complicated, should we say? Yeah.
And on that
note, I grew up with two sisters and a mum. I'm not going where I'm going to go with this, but I actually synced with them. I think I synced like. All as one. They're kind of like periods that we all synced together. We all got angry together. We all got like achy together. And I'm like, what's happening to me?
Chris, I thought you were going to say I grew up with two dildos. You have no brothers or sisters, just two dildos.
I've ordered a collection. They're called the Avengers.
Classic comedians though, start on if ghosts is real and end on dildos.
Yeah, I know. We are so hack.
You still brought it back to knobs.
I know. I have been a bad influence on this episode. I apologise. I have not led it in a good direction.
Call it the knob one.
Yeah.
There's a website that you can send your ashes in, and they will make your partner's ashes into a sex toy, like a dildo or whatever. And it's kind of like I had a picture of this kind of old 90-year-old lady getting one back and then going out into the garden and going, Steve, look, this is a real dick. She's reincarnated him into a rubber dildo and gone in the garden and gone, look at this.
To a dick that's preferable, like a big girthy one.
Can I just say one thing? Have you got a podcast coming up about dildos where you're going to talk about conspiracies?
Yeah.
On the brain.
Do you want to be on it?
I can't help it. I love conspiracies.
On a nicer note. So Mark Watson's doing this 24-hour, 42-hour gig that he usually does. He's doing it online, and I'm going to be part of it. And throughout the 24 hours or 42 hours, I can't remember what time. I've got these transcripts of conversations I've had with people with dementia over the years, and some of them are really funny and surreal, and some of them are strange and elliptical, like a Beckett play or something. And then it's going to end on, there's this one woman, she's sadly passed away now, and a woman I really adored. I loved her so much. She was like one of my closest friends, and she was at the home for 15 years, and I looked after her for 8. And I've got this recording that her daughter has given me permission to play on Mark's show and as part of my debut hour when that eventually comes around. And it's me and this woman talking about how we'd like to be disposed of when we die. And it's this lovely, like, beautiful, elegiac conversation, but really sort of funny and sweet, where we discuss in depth what we want to happen to us when we eventually die. And she said like she wanted like be put in this bowl and buried in the ground, so that she's going, and a lovely tree will go from me. I will be in the ground and I will disintegrate, and there'll be a lovely tree that will grow up from the ground. And it's such a beautiful conversation. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Mate, and then she pulls out a dildo.
Yeah, and then she and then she starts doing a trip advisor on her favorite dildos. I'm like, Mari, you really ruined this. I like a big fat one up me, you know? And a lovely dildo grows from the ground.
A dill tree.
Yeah. Actually, when I was younger, my first exposure to sort of sex and to the vagaries of sex was from a guy called Craig. Shout out to Craig Taus if you're listening, who told me that he discovered a tree that was called a clit tree and grew clitorises. And so yeah, I always thought you'd find a clitoris tree, and that's how
you go to find the tree and realize it moved.
No, yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. I can never bloody find it. I can no matter how hard I looked for that clip tree, and even when I found it, I didn't know what to do with it. And yes,
to be fair, I thought I found it, and now I've been banned from my local garden centre. So
yeah.
I guess you can't come again.
Hey.
We can't end there, guys. We're not ending.
What an ending!
We're not ending. Lovely ending. Oh, that's a lovely story, and I guess that when that comes out, and when your debut comes out, it's going to be great. So that's really cool. Any closing statements to the? Yeah,
I really do want to apologise for making it so incredibly knob heavy. I've just got really caught up on the knob motif, and I do apologise. I promise.
Insight to your pillow talk now.
I know.
I apologise for making it knob heavy.
I'm having a very immature day today. It was very immature and childish, but I'll make sure we mean business for the next one, and that I
great fun.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about next week doing like an all-American conspiracy, so anything American, and then we'll get some Americans on to discuss, and we'll challenge them, and we'll get them back on. And so yeah, anything American-based really. So it could be history-based, or we'll play around with it. But I really appreciate you guys coming back on and entertaining for another hour. So fucking great, loved it.
Cheers, thanks very much. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.